a market update. I'm Britta Erickson. I'm with Lease Economics, and I handle research, marketing, and development throughout the country. So we're here with a panel of two tenants and a fellow researcher and developer. And the two tenants have really nice balance. One has been in our state for over 100 years, so they know the market better than anyone. And the other one is just getting ready to expand into the state. And so I'm going to introduce Dwayne Stiller first. Dwayne, do you want to give a quick introduction about yourself?
I'm Dwayne Stiller with Woolbright Development. This is probably my 30th ICSC conference in Orlando. I started coming here when I was 12. No, I'm hitting in that mark. It is my 30th at least. Woolbright is based in Boca Raton, Florida. Since 2000, we have bought 100 shopping centers in Florida, primarily with the intention of redeveloping them, fixing them, and selling them. So what's interesting about us, though, is we have a very large research team, some of them are in the front row, an IT team. So we spend a lot of time thinking about, big data together with just big real estate.
Wade, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Wade Laufenberg. I'm the Senior VP of Real Estate and Construction for Bells. We're a Florida-based retailer and have been for 108 years on the west coast of Florida in Bradenton. And we operate stores in 23 states, but Florida is our biggest state. We have almost 250 stores in the state of Florida in just about every market you can imagine.
Very good. And Brandon?
Yeah, Brandon Shawn with Dutch Bros Coffee, based out of Oregon. This is my second Orlando ICSC. We're a drive-through coffee company, recently publicly traded on the New York Stock Exchange, identifying Orlando as our first market and then the rest of Florida for the years to come.
Very good. And so we're going to talk a little bit about how Florida is very different than other markets and how the site criteria or equation in other parts of the country doesn't quite work here. And we're going to talk about that uniqueness and that our market is built for playing and not business. And so it has a little bit different metrics that we look at. Tourism is up on the screen right now. Everyone knows we have tourists, right? Everyone knows we have seasonal residents, but they don't know and really account for the effect that we have. So we'll go into this more later, but we had 137 million people come to the state of Florida last year, which was a record. Half of them, more than half of them, 74 million came to Orlando. And that's by far more than any other city in the United States. And it is also not including anyone in state. So people like me who come over from Tampa to Orlando, those are excluded from the number. So it's a really huge economic driver, and we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about age, we're going to talk about the retirement population, and all those things. So the first thing we want to talk about, though, is the hot retailers. Who is growing in the state? Who's expanding? And we have two of them right here. And so, Brandon, do you want to talk first about
your brand? Yeah, so Dutch Bros Coffee, we signed our first lease in the state of Florida at the end of last year. We're getting ready to open our first stores Q1 of next year, identifying the Orlando MSA first, moving into Jacksonville and then Tampa and eventually up into the Panhandle for the first year. And then we'll move into the southwest, southeast part of Florida. Dutch Bros is a drive-through only concept, so we have a 950 square foot kiosk stand, and we primarily do beverages. And so that's kind of what we're looking at. The reason why we're coming into Florida is the growth in Florida has been, uncanny how much growth there is out here. And so for us to be able to identify with these new emerging markets in the state of Florida, it's perfect for what we're looking for.
Brandon, quick question for you.
Yeah.
Is that a modular building or is that built in place?
That is a great question. We do have a modular program. We actually have a modular vendor out of Florida. So thank you for that, Dwayne. And then a lot of them are stick built as well. And so we're leveraging both factors on that.
So I'm amazed there just wasn't more, what do I say, technological advancements in construction, and modular just seems like, particularly for a 950-foot concept, it's just such a natural chance for innovation.
Yeah, you get a lot of scale, economies of scale with it, especially with like a hurricane coming in like we have this week. You can build these in place and then set them down. In 12 hours, you can go from site work to store. It's pretty amazing what you can do.
It's awesome.
Wade, do you want to tell us a little bit about Bell's and their history and their expansion?
Yeah, so we've been in Florida for over 100 years. With 250 stores in the state, we've got pretty good penetration, but there is just so much opportunity in Florida that we're continuing to invest in Florida. We're doing that with new stores. We have some new divisions, home-centric. We launched 5 years ago, so that's something we're really trying to establish more locations in Florida. We're also investing in our existing locations. We're doing things such as expansions where we're taking over existing space because our business is that good, and expanding some of our stores. We're taking some of our very large Bell's Florida stores that are 80 to 100,000 square feet, and we're right-sizing them. And then in 3 situations, we are taking the residual space and we're putting one of our combination stores, Bell's and Home Centric, into that residual space. So we get all 3 concepts under one roof. And we're actually doing that right here in Orlando. It's under construction in Winter Garden Village as we speak. So we're doing that kind of thing, really investing in our existing portfolio as well as opening new stores. And then the last thing, we're launching a brand new concept, and this is based on our private label, Real Legends, which is a Florida icon. And in October, we're going to be opening our first specialty concept store, Real Legends, in Okeechobee, Florida.
Very good.
Wade, I had a quick question for you. Is any of your concepts focused on the Hispanic market? I've seen a lot of retailers, evolve and say, hey, I've got this fresco and moss concept, a division of Winn-Dixie or Publix with Sabor. Has Bell's ever, toyed with tweaking the brand, or how do you address that huge market out there of the Hispanic market?
Well, we don't have a concept that's specifically geared towards Hispanic customers, but we do have a lot of experience with Hispanic customers, not only in Florida, but in places like Texas.
Sure.
So our merchants do a great job of tailoring our merchandise mix in those markets. Of course, we put bilingual signage up in those stores where we have that kind of population. So we're doing things like that to address that customer.
You guys do a great job of specifying the inventory for the markets and everything, and having a more, I won't say local feel, but you really try to meet the market and the demographics of the market with your inventory.
Yeah, absolutely. We got a whole planning allocation team that does individual store level planning for the entire chain to make sure it's right for that particular market.
That's great. So besides these 2 retailers, there's a lot of people growing, a lot of people who want to be here. And Dwayne does a lot of unique primary data, right, where you track store openings and closures, and it's probably one of the most unique data sets that I've seen. And so can you tell us about the types of retailers that are really expanding, any specific brands you want to call out, but really, who's making moves in our state that we can do more deals with?
Wow, that's a really deep question. When you look at strip shopping centers in Florida, 70% of the space, GLA, is leased to somebody that uses more than 10,000 feet. So Wade, not necessarily Brandon, right? That's 70% of the GLA. So what happens to those boxes? There's about 100 companies operating in Florida with collectively 15 or more boxes, right? With 15 or more locations. And these companies have 11,000 stores. So Wade's, hey, I got 250 in Florida. The average is 110. Some folks like Whole Foods have 30, and Costco has 30, and some folks like Publix and Walgreens and CVS have close to 900. So what happens to this group? The 70% of the space matters a lot, right? Last year, this group of these 100 compadres collectively opened 300 stores, and they closed 200. And you're like, well, Dwayne, I look at your earlier presentation today, there was only 8 new shopping centers to open in the major markets. How did we take care of that extra 100 people? Well, in the last 3 years, as Wade has been growing his concept, we've been eating up the empty space. So we have gotten rid in the last 3 years of half of all the empty boxes. Pretty remarkable. We used to complain about those failing shopping centers and the retail apocalypse. Now there are places like Cape Coral where there's literally no empty box, right? You're like, oh, how did that happen? And so who is the big grower? Sometimes it's hard for you to realize that it's Dollar General and Dollar Tree, each opening 40 stores, right? You want to think it's Publix, and they were important. They opened 20 stores, and so was Aldi important. They opened 25. But as we mentioned, Aldi, what's really cool is here's a company that came into Florida about 10 years ago with no stores. They quickly grew to 250 stores, which Wade will tell you that's very hard to do. He had 100 years to do it. They had to do it in 10. And then last week, they doubled the 250 stores to 500 stores by buying Winn-Dixie, and they did it by taking on a network where they only have about 10 duplicates, meaning they'll wake up the next day with almost double the number of stores. And so that's pretty cool, right? And I thought what was going on outside our state with Kroger, the number 2 grocer, merging with Albertsons, the number 3, was pretty cool and disruptive. Here we have in Florida sort of our number 3 merging with our number 4. All lining up to take on the big green monster and the evil Walmart, right? So it's pretty cool out there what's happening, and it's happening against the backdrop of almost nothing new being built.
I know it's hard if all the boxes have been eaten up, right? And then there's not a lot coming out of the ground. Where do we go? Where are these new tenants?
And what happens to prices, Britta?
Prices.
Right, when we run out of toilet paper, I remember during the pandemic, what happens to prices, right? And if you're in Tampa tomorrow and lining up for gas, it gets to be a long wait.
That's true. So we're going to talk a little bit about some of the hot markets that are out there. And Wade, do you want to talk about, I know you talked about the Orlando combo store. Do you want to talk about, some of the stores that you're performing really well at that are sort of niches in the Florida market, that maybe, I guess, some of the sleeper markets you want to talk about?
Yeah, so we're in such a wide variety of markets in Florida. I mean, we're in every part of Florida. We're in the East Coast, the West Coast. We're in the Panhandle. And then probably something that's kind of unique to us, we are in a lot of really small rural markets in the central part of the state. So we really can run the gambit from very small towns in Florida all the way up to Miami, Fort Lauderdale market. And the one thing that we've found very interesting is the Florida customer is very unique. So we have all this good data that we get from our More Rewards program. It's a loyalty program, because we have 85% of all transactions are done in conjunction with that loyalty program. So it gives us a really solid data set. And we can tie that to the transaction and understand who our best customers are. And so we've developed a customer profile, and our customer profile in Florida is very different. Those segments that we key on from what we have for our best customers in Texas or the Southeast or the Midwest. So it's a very unique customer that we've come to learn because we have great data on who the Florida customer is.
Yeah, you pinpoint data of where people are and where they're shopping, what stores they're shopping in, which is invaluable to understanding the Florida market. Brandon, do you want to talk about the markets that you're looking at?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Orlando, Florida, Orlando's got some of the most exciting new developments coming that have been being built over the last couple of years. O-Town West with Unicorp is very exciting. Village Point across the street getting a massive entertainer like Area 51. And so our brand is very young driven. Our customer profile is young 30s, families, husband and wife with kids. And so being able to be near the tourist corridors and watching 40, 50,000 cars go in front of you and being that first drink in the morning and second drink in the afternoon, really exciting for us. I think the one I'm most excited for is we've got 3 projects on Highway 27. I haven't seen growth like Highway 27 has over the last 5 years since Texas, right? Texas 10 years ago. So it's really interesting to see. I think those are what I'm the most excited about. We've got some really awesome projects up in Pensacola and Jacksonville that we're working on as well. Florida's just a great market. We're just really excited to come into the Southeast. So next year it'll be kind of light the world on fire with Dutch Bros. Very excited.
So you tend to serve people like me who are tired parents who need multiple coffees throughout the day, right? Is what I'm hearing.
Yeah, I just found out I'm having my first kid in February, and so I doubled down on my stock. I was like, I'm going to be drinking coffee all day long. And that's exactly what it is. It's the people going to work in the morning, a lot of families dropping their kids off at school, or businessmen and women going to work. And then what a lot of people don't realize is that coffee is a major part of our menu. We also have energy drinks and teas, and a lot of we call it drink 3 during the day, heading home. Stuck in traffic, heading home, those kind of drinks. So once people realize that we're not just an AM beverage, we're also a PM beverage, like they have in the West Coast, we're really excited.
So if you come to Tampa, you're going to do well. So just bring a store closer to Carrollwood. I will be going there.
We've got a site in Dale Mabry.
Yes, I know where I live.
And the Tampa moms, they've been on Facebook and letting us know that they're ready for us.
we are. And so, Dwayne, do you want to talk about where you're seeing the openings, like what markets are where the tenants are really wanting to go into? Maybe they don't have space in some of those markets. We don't have some coming out of the ground, but where do you see the tenants going?
So Britta, the market fundamentals today in the major metro areas of Florida are as strong as I've ever seen in the 40 years I've been doing the census of each individual center. So it used to be the vacancy rate was 10%, and now it's something between 4 and 6. That's a remarkable place. It's an all-time record. Whether you're in Tampa, you've just improved 200 basis points. You've gone from 8 to 6. You're in Dade County, you've gotten into the 3s. I never thought we'd see 3%-ish vacancy. But what's coming with that has been after 2 decades of 3% rent growth. Last year, Publix landlords raised their rents by an average of 10%, and they're on track this year to raise the rent 20%. So I feel like we're competing with where the used car folks were during the pandemic, or perhaps where the apartment folks also were. So we got record rising rents, record low vacancies, and last year we hit peak retail. What do I mean by that? We actually demolished more space than we built this year. So we have one of the fastest growing states in the country. Every 10 years, we increase our population by about 3.5 million people. So that's building the entire state of Alabama, or that's building all of Dade County every 10 years, every house, hospital, whatever. Now this is a remarkable place to be, and now we're everybody wants to go to the restaurant or go to one of Wade's stores or get a coffee from Brendan, and that's having to happen against the backdrop. This is the slide with ever fewer space, right? We forgot to mention that we're not going to talk here so much about the enclosed malls. For the next 10 years, we're likely to get rid of half of them. So it's a really interesting time. I mean, so much sizzle, but by the same token, so much complexity, and it's really hard to figure out where is this all good or is it bad?
Well, Dwayne, as a pad retailer, we're converting more stores now than we ever have been before, because you have all these brands that are becoming tired, and landlords need that rent, and so we're coming in, we're saying, okay, how do we we're originally 950 square feet, but how are we creative in taking a 3,500 square foot Wendy's or KFC, throw some roll-up doors on it, some garage doors on it, you have an indoor-outdoor space for the families to hang out in, and now we're in a market that maybe bans drive-thrus, or maybe the retail vacancy is 3%.
In some of the markets, Brendan, we're noticing that the municipalities are saying, you know what? Yeah, you do have enough parking to add Brandon in. We think that we've looked at the last 10 years. Nobody uses those last few spots over there. We'd like to have a coffee. We'd like to create some more real estate value. We'd like more taxes. So you're right. I'm seeing a lot of it either repurposing or in a lot of our projects, we always can find a way to squeeze one more good idea in.
Well, don't get me started on municipalities and traffic studies, and those parking studies. Pain an arm and a leg for them.
And then we're going to talk about more of the specific developments. Brendan, do you want to I know you talked about O-Town West, which is up on the screen right now, but can you talk about the type of centers that you like to grow in? Is it, power centers, is it neighborhood centers, and then call out any specifics
Yeah.
you like?
We're simple. We're not a destination retailer. We're not, nobody's going to go 20 minutes out of the way to get a cup of coffee and wait an hour in line for a cup of coffee like we would a chicken sandwich. We like daily needs retail. The grocers are exactly where we want to be with. Pair us with a gym or a Bell's. If you're shopping there with your family, that's where we want to be. If it's on your way to work, great. If it's on your way home from school, great. But it's tip of the tongue. We want to be daily touches, and that's exactly where we need to be. Access needs to be easy to get in and out of, but we do really well with the big time grocers. We talked about Aldi buying Winn-Dixie. I got 100 emails that day that Aldi bought Winn-Dixie because they're like, "We have opportunity. Let's go."
That's awesome. And Wade, do you want to talk a little bit about the types of centers that Bell's likes to go into and maybe with the different brands?
Yeah, well, in Florida, overwhelmingly, our number one co-tenant is Publix. I mean, they have a lot of stores here. They're in a great traffic generator in the centers that we're in. So we do a lot of centers with Publix. Some of the retailers that are expanding that we like as an addition to centers we're in, Five Below is a great one. They're opening a lot of stores, and we kind of see them as off-price for kids. And so, mother comes there with her kids, that off-price shopping. It's a really nice synergy with us. So they're a great add to most centers we're in. And, we love being part of redevelopments of centers. A great example over in the Tampa market is Bloomingdale Square in the Brandon submarket. Our landlord there relocated to Publix because Publix, as they often do, they build bigger, modern facility stores. And that provided the opportunity for some space for us to do a home centric. So all of a sudden we get a new standalone home centric there. We already had a Bell's Florida store there. So in phase 2, we came back and we remodeled our store. And then they backfilled the old Publix with a LA Fitness. So the shopping center became unrecognizable. It was just
It looks
really,
beautiful now.
really nice redevelopment. So we love being, cooperating partnership with our landlords and helping to redevelop shopping centers.
Wait, I'm curious. You mentioned Publix, which I think everybody here would agree with. That's a great traffic generator. Then you mentioned fitness and LA Fitness, and of course we see there's a whole panoply of fitness operators out there. How does fitness? Do they impact retailers in a positive way? I mean, are you happy to see fitness in addition to the grocery store?
Yeah, we are. Most retailers don't like to have a large fitness user right next door to them because of the parking concerns. So as long as there's a little separation, or if it's a less intensive type of fitness user, but we definitely find that when we've got a major fitness user in our plaza, our activewear business is 20% higher than in our typical store.
So they finish working out and they go buy something. Mm-hmm. That's fantastic.
And so we're going to sort of parlay into talking about the market economic drivers and so forth. And Dwayne, I would like to start with you on that about, why is the Florida consumer different? And what do we need to be looking for leasing space and opening stores? What are those key components?
So I think I've touched on this already. I remind my students at Cornell, where I teach some classes from time to time on the future of real estate, that half of the United States grows if half doesn't. Don't be in the wrong half. And we're blessed here in Florida with just amazing growth. And we're reminded time and time again by our institutional partners how unique Florida and Texas are relative to the rest of the country. And so I just think, Britta, it's just, every decade since we moved here in 1970, Florida has added 3 million people. The population growth rate has gone down, but that 3 million people kept building on a bigger and bigger base. So, you can imagine when I was a little kid, there were only 6 million people here today, and now there's 22 million people. It's just amazing. We've had this melting pot of different nationalities. It all seems to work. We've got great restaurants and all throughout the state. And so, you know, we've got great universities. We've got great weather. We have a really wonderful tax state. From time to time, our governor gets things right. We did pretty well during COVID. We won't judge him after that necessarily, but we've got good governance, right? Things work here. So, you know, and as you mentioned, Britt, I mean, look at what a great tourist destination we are. And I think that's, you know, we're still recovering from COVID. I know we're back, but for example, the Asian tourist, the Chinese market hasn't, which was 10% of U.S. tourism, hasn't even begun to restart. So again, you know, you've got another big wave of growth potential coming.
Even like Europe and everything too, there's a lot more opportunity.
So I you know, these next 10 years, I mean, these are this is the go-go 20s, the roaring 20s in my opinion. All we got to get through is an inverted yield curve and things will be pretty wonderful again.
Yeah, I mean, as you saw on the slide, we have a great net migration. Everyone talks about the 1,000 people a day, right, moving to Florida. But what we don't talk about is the balance is we have a very elder population here too, a lot of retirees. So we're constantly fighting sort of natural decreases in our population sizes. But we have so many people moving here. And then we have the tourism and the seasonality, which seasonality numbers don't show up in any of the numbers that you look at. Like the projections, you have to look at specialized data sets. So if you're not looking at those, there's markets that are, you know, doubling, tripling in size during season that you aren't capturing in your site criteria and your evaluation numbers. And so I think that's really interesting. And I think since COVID, something that gets a little bit lost in a lot of the data that we use that is census-based is that, you know, Florida's made to play. People come here to play, and now we have an opportunity as people work from home and have done more remote working, where I think in the next census, you're going to see a lot of younger demographic come to permanent residence here. So I think at least that's my projection.
Britta, going back to your tourism thing, a more concrete example. So about on average, Florida has 22 feet of retail space per person in these strip centers over 50,000 feet. But if you go to the area around Disney, that's triple, right? That shows you the power of, and by the way, those retailers are doing pretty darn well in the area around Disney. So that's that impact of tourism, right? I mean, it would allow you to have 3 times the number of businesses if you have, you know, for example, robust tourism.
Yeah, if we have 22 million people in this state and 137 million people coming here, not including the seasonal numbers, I mean, that just shows you sort of that impact. And they're coming here to spend money, right? They're coming here to have fun and spend money in these markets. So understanding that tourist and understanding how they spend money is really important.
Well, and Britta, that's a big reason why Dutch Bros picked Florida as the market, you know, the big third market that we were going to infiltrate on the eastern seaboard. We went California, we're from Oregon, went down to California, Texas, and then the tentpole model takes us all the way out here to Florida. But we're looking at where are those tourists coming from? Let's get them identified with our brand, identified with our product, so when they go home to Pennsylvania, Ohio, they're asking for us. They're asking us to come to that market. And it kind of, as I see the Beals market, how you guys started in Florida, and then you guys started to spread out, and that's where your tourists were coming from, right?
And Brandon, for you, what would be an ideal store count? You know, if we could magically go 20 years in the future and you say, I hit my goal for Florida, how many stores do you have here?
So it's public knowledge because we're a publicly traded company now, so it's no secret that we're going for 4,000 stores in the next 10 to 15 years. We'll open store 790 this week. So we've got a long roadway ahead. We easily see Florida having 250, 350 stores. And it really just depends on how Florida keeps growing. If they keep growing at that 3 million people every 10 years, I mean, the sky's the limit for Florida. We're barely scratching the surface in Texas. We've got over 145 locations over the state of Texas in the first 2 years, and we're barely scratching the surface out there. So Florida is a very, very similar market. Very excited for it.
Yeah, and some of the economic things, I know we're limited on time, but Wade, I know that like you had talked about operating in these more rural markets and smaller markets in Florida. And, you know, is there any like, I guess, things we can glean from going into maybe not, I think everyone goes into Orlando and they go into Miami and they go into Tampa, right? And sometimes the equation doesn't work when they first enter, but there's so much opportunity, I feel, in the B and C markets in Florida because of that seasonality, because of the spending.
There is. We have the seasonality throughout Florida, and it's a huge. As a matter of fact, the snowbird season is actually a more important season for us here in Florida than the holiday season. And as a matter of fact, most retail leases expire in January, right? Because the retailer wants to get through the holidays before lease ends. Our Florida leases expire at the end of April, and we specifically do that because that's our holiday, getting through that snowbird season. It's that significant for us. And we have our customers coming from states where there are no bells, but they're coming down here for snowbird season and spending their dollars with us.
Yep. And like one thing I'll leave you guys with is that when you look at site criteria here and you look at how to market your sites, do not look at the averages and the medians. They get very skewed here with age, with income. A lot of people don't have income here. You look at Naples, it looks horrible on an income map. It's one of the wealthiest areas in the country. So you got to really understand that market and understand that the wealth behind people and their consumer spending patterns. It's much different here than it is in other places. So I think that's all we have.
Fantastic.
Thank you guys very much. I appreciate your time. If you want